Oh, Shay found such a sick Civic. Or Corolla, I mean.
You're gonna go buy a Corolla?
It's 2013 with 59,000 kilometers for $7,900.
That's pretty good. And then
Pretty dreamy.
you can ghost ride the van off a cliff and call it a day.
Automatic transmission.
Yeah, that's,
Like
man,
I was like, oh,
I got to
shitty manual.
I got to drive.
Do they even make manuals anymore?
Yeah.
Yep, you can buy a Corolla manual. It's like a couple grand cheaper than.
Oh, okay. Because on like a F-150 or something, I believe it's extra money to get it standard now.
Yeah, I would imagine that they're just trying to phase that out.
Japan's still
At least
bringing the
on
heat.
the Corolla.
Yeah.
I think a
I
lot of
Japan
the
gets
other
it.
ones.
driven a standard Corolla for a while, and God, I hated it. I hated every second of that car. Using it.
Well, that Corolla was particularly crap. The next one that we had was a lot better
Yeah,
transmission
it's a way
than
better.
the first one.
Well, it was geared properly. Anyways, this is super exciting, and we're live, so I'm sure we're boring the one person who ever watches this damn podcast. So we should probably stop before we lose him. So today's topic is the Cryptoverse. We wanted to. Everybody's hyped up about Bitcoin being, and the other coins making about $2 trillion of the economy's value. So, or the market cap of the economy. So we decided to take a look at cryptocurrencies, the blockchain, various decentralized finance aspects, and
Bitcoin's had its day. It's all about
it's over now. It's all about Dogecoin. Essentially,
No, it's all about.
Go ahead.
It's all about demonstrably green energy mined Bitcoin. Got to get on that Bitcoin.
Oh, is there a green energy fork coin version of Bitcoin?
I'm sure there
that
is.
I missed.
No, it's not a fork, but you can allegedly you can show like the trace back to who mined it or whoever sold it to you, and if it's from a mining conglomerate that uses green energy, then that can be noted.
We're gonna get hipster Bitcoin owners.
That's what I heard, but I don't know how true it is. But I'm banking on it because Canadian Bitcoin all mined with hydro.
Yeah, this was hydro GMO free range Bitcoin.
It actually
Only the
will
finest.
be a big deal because I think a lot of people don't really understand the absolute monstrous power draw. Before we launch into all of this is going to be a much more free-form podcast. We're just going to shoot the breeze over crypto and blockchain.
No, we're gonna teach you MIT style exactly how it works. We know we got the coding skills, we got the economic skills, we got the law skills. We're gonna get into it nitty gritty.
The three of us can go build the rest of the future of crypto.
We're gonna leave. You're gonna leave this podcast total foundational skills completed. That's what our goal is for this podcast. No further research required.
Now
we're going down to first principles
to go make an absolute fortune in investment.
That's cash out your RRSP or 401k, whatever you got, and go invest after this one.
Yeah.
This is financial advice.
This is financial advice.
This is actionable financial advice that you should immediately
For the love of God, if you invest off of this podcast, you need to seek medical attention because you lost your damn mind.
My play is to 100x leverage invest in whatever's been the most up in the last 24 hours.
It's momentum investing.
That's my personal algorithm for investing, but I don't know.
It's well within your personal risk
something
tolerance.
different. Yeah,
well, I mean, personally, I'm more of a 1,000, but I go in the last 15 minutes. What's up the most? Because I want like that short-term momentum, you know.
I also borrow the money that I'm going to put into the crypto realm, so then it's like double.
Well, you know, just take a loan, take out your line of credit, and then you get that 1,000x on there. Whichever exchange you feel like.
Mr. Responsible here, not getting a cash advance on his credit card. Line of credit, probably 4% interest rate. That's like chicken shit.
Exactly. I'm going to the cash tree or money tree or whatever that lending scheme is. I'm gonna go get one of those, and then if that doesn't work, I'm going to a loan shark.
I was gonna say I'm going down to Tony at the corner of the street and asking for my loan.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, like all the loan sharks I know frequent the sports bars, and those are all closed down due to COVID. It was really hurting my ability to invest.
Goddamn COVID. So, should we pick a starting point at the very least?
Yeah, whatever you guys want to do is fine by me. I
think one interesting thing to talk about, which is because obviously, jokes aside, Bitcoin is the major cryptocurrency, and probably it's like the Kleenex of cryptocurrency, where it's the name brand that defines the product category for a lot of people. Like a lot of people don't know what cryptocurrency is, but they know what Bitcoin is. And I think that there is like an interesting conversation there, because there's a section of the good chunk of the crypto community, I suppose, that is fully dedicated to Bitcoin only, like Bitcoin maximalism. Bitcoin will be basically the only surviving, or the main survivor of the cryptocurrency technology, and it'll be where 90+% of the value goes in terms of the crypto space. That would be the Bitcoin maximalist position. And then you obviously have a whole range of opposition or deviation from that standpoint, from all the way down to Bitcoin minimalism, which is Bitcoin's going to die, go to zero,
and Dogecoin maximalism.
Yeah, I don't think that's a high percentage of the community, but there's a few.
Hey, it's growing. It's growing on Reddit.
Yeah, I'm sure there is a few Reddit. Actually, I have seen Reddit posts claiming that we will be doing all future transactions in Dogecoin in the future, and so it doesn't matter.
People's coin.
There's no supply cap. It's like the USD. Print, baby, print, because we're going to use it forever. Yeah, so I do think that would probably be somewhere to start with that argument. And I guess maybe I'll just give the maximalist argument. And their argument essentially, as far as I can tell, is that Bitcoin is supply capped, and everyone knows how many Bitcoin there are, how many there will be, how many there can be possible, and therefore it's not an inflationary monetary system. And that's their claim, is that it is a algorithmic monetary policy. Bitcoin has, like a central bank has a monetary policy, and Bitcoin's is done by algorithm, and it's known to everyone, and it's a hard cap supply. Therefore, that will compete against other monetary systems in terms of central banks printing fiat currency. And their claim is that Bitcoin has the clear superior monetary system. Therefore, Bitcoin will win out over many fiat currencies, and that that superiority will allow it to claim a huge chunk of value in the financial system.
Yeah, what I find with ever running into that argument is a lot of the arguments they present go hand in hand with arguments presented by people who physically stack precious metals rather than owning precious metals on paper. Because if you, not your wallet, not your crypto, not your stack, not your precious metals. And I honestly pretty much tune them out, because it hasn't panned out for them, and they've been beating on the drum with precious metals since the 70s at least. And it just seems like a lot of those people have moved into crypto as the same idea and just poured it over a bunch of the arguments.
Yeah, there's obviously arguments against the Bitcoin maximalist theory. One being that that it's not the superior monetary policy, right? That you need some sort of small amount of inflation to encourage both lending and borrowing and spending, right? Why would you spend a coin that is set to appreciate in value, aka a coin that currency that is under deflationary pressure, why would you spend it? Well, if no one spends it, then what's the purpose, right? Like it's kind of a catch-22 where there's, if this cap supply really is the be-all end-all and you do have a deflationary situation, then why do you spend it? If you can't spend it or you don't want to spend it, also, why would you borrow in Bitcoin? If you take out a loan in Bitcoin and it's deflationary, so therefore you have to pay back more than you borrowed. A lot of borrowers rely on a little bit of inflation to kind of erode their loan value to a certain degree and make it a little give them a little bit of breathing room when paying it back. And I think the argument I've heard from Bitcoiners is that Bitcoin is just going to be the base layer, the gold, the store of value, and there's going to be all sorts of other additional monetary layers built on top, just like we had in fiat currency land back in the day of the gold standard, where you have your gold standard, but then you have notes and credit cards and all that stuff that goes on top of it that makes these things work. To be honest, I think there is an argument that you could put layers on that would alleviate some of the problems that say a deflationary currency has, but yeah, I don't know.
From what
I just feel like
oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say intuitively, it feels like a step backwards in the understanding of the economy, and that's doesn't resonate with me. Going back to how things used to be done.
You want to put your point, Con?
Yeah, like the thing that I noted is it just seems that Bitcoin itself is a little bit limited in its technology as it's like the first proof of concept coin. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the best or is going to be usable for everything. I obviously don't understand the other things they're trying to do with the other coins completely. It's just they dive into pretty deep theory and mathematics and cryptography, and but from my cursory understanding, it just seems like there are some significant limitations to Bitcoin that you're just not going to get around, and because of that, like it seems like you might not even be able to build the layers on top of it that you need to. At least there's some of the arguments I've seen state that it just doesn't seem possible, and you need those to be able to have like a fully functioning economy like we do now. So I don't know how true or not that really is. Who knows? But that was something I've seen levied at the maximalists quite a bit.
That I have seen those arguments. I think the maximalist response that I've seen frequently is basically Bitcoin is centered around security, essentially, where the fact that it is the biggest coin and has the most hash rate by a lot, it has the most amount of decentralized power working to secure the chain, means that they've kind and because like one of the big kind of splits in Bitcoin history was block size, and OG Bitcoin stuck with small block sizes in terms of amount of information, amount of transactions.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I believe, Bitcoin Cash that forked out of that disagreement with bigger block sizes. And the argument for keeping small block sizes was so that nodes, like the growth in the amount of information you needed to store the full chain, was limited, so that you could keep it decentralized, because you could still run a full node on just a personal computer, basically. And if you start increasing the block size to increase transactions quickly, the amount of data needed to store the whole chain becomes higher and higher and higher, and could potentially spin out of control, such that you need to have a fairly substantial setup to be a full node. And I mean, market cap is no perfect indicator, but it's pretty clear that people went with OG Bitcoin, and Bitcoin Cash is, it's still around, and it's not gone. It's like the 10th biggest cryptocurrency, but it's dwarfed. It's what, 1/50th the size or something of Bitcoin right now. So that would be their argument. Is like this thing is 100% about decentralized security, about keeping the blockchain as secure as possible. It's not about all the fancy gimmicks. Those can be done by other coins or done by other systems that don't need to rely on base layer Bitcoin.
Yeah, I don't have much more on the maximalists. Intuitively, I don't think it's going to pan out that way, but to be able to predict this type of stuff is impossible, so.
Well, the thing that gets me is I agree that Bitcoin is like the gold of cryptocurrencies. That makes sense. But then I think they treat it like the people, as I was saying, that treat real gold as the only store of value. They view Bitcoin as the only store of value. It's just, I think real gold is also a store of value, but I don't have the same view on it that the people who are really into real gold have. Like, it just seems a little too over the top.
Yeah, and I think you made a really good point, Price. The fact that it does seem like a lot of the arguments made about gold and how you should all have like stacks of that in your house, just it doesn't track with reality, right? And same thing with Bitcoin. I don't see it. I don't see it being the one thing, the one store of value. Like there's many precious metals and like people when they store value, they use diamonds, they use a bunch of different things. It's not just gold. It seems.
Diamonds. I got some bad news for you on diamonds. I hope people don't store value in diamonds.
They do.
Diamonds have been proven to be very open to inflationary pressures of people printing them.
Yeah. Now it's a problem, but for a long time.
Yeah, well, not only do people print them, but they're abundant in excess in the earth. It's just run by a cartel that limits supply.
True. Yeah, but that's exactly it. But people, a lot of them don't.
Which I guess there is some aspect. Someone has a very large amount of Bitcoin, if I'm not mistaken. So there's kind of that aspect, but not to the same degree.
Yeah, doesn't Satoshi to have the first million or something?
That's the theory, that there's about 1 million that would be in Satoshi's wallet. Again, to defend the maximalist position a little bit, I think they would argue along the lines of, yes, true, or they maybe some of them are more fanatic than this, but like where Bitcoin is everything and nothing else will exist. But I think the more kind of maybe the more reasonable ones would say Bitcoin will be the store of value. And if you look at gold's market cap, it's 10 trillion. So let's pretend that, Bitcoin's in price discovery stage, and Bitcoin will, take out gold, take out platinum, take out silver, take out other equivalent stores of value. It might capture, 20 or 30 or 40 trillion dollars worth of store of value market cap, which would be 10 to 40x what it's at now. So, the maximalist position is at this current pricing, it's still an absolute steal. Like if you're converting your USD into Bitcoin every day, you're just setting yourself up for a future where, Bitcoin maybe is not the only thing it's obviously not the only thing in the financial markets, but it's, if it's at the size of gold, or it's 2x gold, or it's 3x gold, you've made yourself rich by believing in Bitcoin at the beginning.
I guess that's definitely the way of presenting the argument that I'm more responsive to, because I do think there's logically room for it to reach the market cap of something like gold.
They'd be saying, like imagine you're back in 1970, when gold was 35 an ounce, and you expect in the next 10 years that it hits 350 an ounce or 700 an ounce or whatever. Why wouldn't you convert your USD into this? It's just, that's their position, I think, from what I understand. And I do see an argument there for that being a possibility. I also see a lot of governments around the world, and I mean this has been a counter argument to a lot of the maximalists, is one, hash rate being concentrated in various countries, mostly China, like over 60% is in China. That should concern people not in China, that maybe Bitcoin, might be open to being manipulated by, say, China in a way that isn't favorable for you if you're not in China, or not even if you are in China, but if you're not the Chinese government, maybe Bitcoin might be open, and having your whole life's savings in it could be susceptible to China's whims. So that's definitely, something that gold isn't in the same situation, right? Like,
Yeah, it definitely. I think if you are going to take a piece of financial advice from this, which I don't suggest, but to me it seems like if anything else is an indication over the last couple hundred years, you don't want to put all your money into something. Like tossing all your money into something like crypto or Bitcoin itself, just like throwing all of your money into gold is likely going to screw you over. Like, you might get super lucky and it turns out to be great, but there's a serious chance that it won't, and you'll wind up hating your life. So,
well, I guess, yeah, and another question you could ask yourself is like, what's the likelihood that governments around the world, especially say something like the U.S. government, doesn't look at this whole crypto thing and eventually decide to maybe release their own, right? That's, the U.S., and they could do a lot of different things with that. The claim that Bitcoin is like the big selling point of Bitcoin, I guess, is its decentralization. The big selling point of fiat currency is that it's backed by U.S. military power. So maybe there's a future where the U.S. could release a cryptocurrency that is both decentralized and backed by the U.S. military.
yeah, I might want to invest
Not a
in
bad
that one.
Yeah, not a bad
consider it.
combo. So
And another term I've seen for fiat is that that I thought it was an interesting perspective is you have to pay your U.S. taxes in U.S. dollars, so there's always a demand for U.S. dollars.
well,
So if you
and
can pay your taxes in U.S. crypto, it's going to be a very popular cryptocurrency.
that is like in line with modern monetary theory and like, central banking, fiat, non-gold standard central banking in general. Yeah, it's like you create a demand for the currency by the fact that you have to pay the citizens have to pay their liabilities to the government in this currency. So yeah, there's always going to be a demand. But yeah,
but
like you said,
that you're just basing that on the assumption we don't devolve into a complete anarchical non-state with no taxes, a libertarian wet dream. So I don't know. I don't know if it's gonna really matter.
well, one other thing I've seen Bitcoiners say is like, oh, well, Bitcoin was the perfect quote unquote release of a cryptocurrency because it started decentralized. It got kind of wide dispersal because of, a lot of the new coins that come out, some whale investor comes in and scoops 40% of the coin supply in anticipation of it going to the moon, etc. Right? But say the U.S. government, they bring out a coin, and their dispersal method is every citizen, with an SSN, I don't know, link the wallets to an SSN or something. I don't know how you could do it technically. I'm not that knowledgeable, but this is kind of my thinking. Is like everyone with an SSN gets 10 coins. The only way to create new coins, the only way that new coins get created, so this would create a small amount of inflation, but a manageable amount of inflation, which might be ideal, I don't know, in a cryptocurrency, is like every time a new SSN comes into existence through birth or immigration, you create 10 new coins. I don't know, some shit like that, where you've basically supply capped it to a very low amount of inflation. You've dispersed it widely. And so I just don't see why the U.S. couldn't do something like that and just, overcome the claims that Bitcoiners make of like, oh, this was the perfect, birth of a coin.
That would be a huge move as well, in the sense that there's a lot of very interesting proposals for basically setting aside a trust for every new American that's born, because you could theoretically alleviate a lot of social ills by reducing poverty if everyone just had $50,000 when they turned 18 or something, and that wouldn't require the government to actually put in $50,000 when they're born. Like, they'd put in money that would turn into $50,000. But if you did it with a coin, then I mean that just solves the problem right there.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Especially if you
make
link it to certain
accessible at
services
18.
or something like that, right? You know, it's, I don't know. I think that's
Yeah.
really interesting. We might be getting a little off topic here. It's a really fascinating path to go
I guess
down. But
directly on topic is that there's the whole claim that Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies are decentralized and therefore
That's true.
better than central banking. That doesn't hold up to the analysis of central banks coming out with their own coin. Like, that's such a huge I think that's like probably the biggest risk if you're holding any of the current coins. The biggest risk is that the incumbent financial system pulls a fast one and just says, okay, we'll just copy and paste what you guys did, but we'll have all the resources and backing of the government, etc. Right? Like, I haven't seen much of a good counter argument to why they can't do that. Like, maybe there's concerns about centralization creeping back in, but I don't know.
That's what I was always wondering about as well, because like for a physical asset, I think like electric cars and Tesla is sort of a fair comparison, in a sense that Tesla was the first mover and has a huge advantage, and now all the legacy guys are coming in with their big established industry and trying to muscle into the market, and they probably will. But Tesla's got a big advantage of having had so many years by themselves to build up their production capacity, so they should be able to actually compete and fight for their existence. But like, something like Bitcoin can't fight for its existence. Like, it just comes down to whether or not people want to buy it. So if all of a sudden the governments all around the world start coming with new and innovative ways or financial systems to produce cryptocurrencies that are more attractive than Bitcoin, it's not like Bitcoin's going to do something to continue to survive. It basically survives on the will of people to buy it.
Well, you can say the same thing about Tesla, right? It's like they survive only based on the will of people to buy it.
No, because they have physical assets, right, that they've built up during their first mover advantage that would have been impossible to get without it.
Yeah, like, you have those.
I guess Bitcoin's advantage is that they have all these miners in the world, as we were talking about, but you just come up with different ways of decentralizing because the software side is evolving.
Yeah, and you could definitely, especially if you're a government, it wouldn't be particularly hard to build up a big ass network of miners if you needed it. It's not that is certainly not beyond the capacity of something like.
Well, I think that would be the criticism, right? Is the big thing about Bitcoin is it's out of the centralized control of the government, so the government can't unilaterally decide to print more, etc., change the rules. Because the thing, I guess, one concern, say you do make a U.S. government cryptocurrency, unless the code is in some way secure against meddling by bureaucrats and elected officials, there is the concern that a president comes in and says, well, we're going to double, we're going to give out 10 coins to every citizen. That's my my election promise. Well, all of a sudden now the monetary policy of the coin that was supposed to be kind of free of centralized meddling and centralized control, it has now been brought back under centralized control and is at the same risks of a fiat currency. So I think I think that would be the big hurdle governments around the world would have to get over to make a cryptocurrency that does have the same appeal as something like Bitcoin, is find some way to, make a really high bar for intervention in any way into the monetary policy of the coin
otherwise
on the whims of politics.
Nobody's
right?
going to trust it, right? Because
I think that's the biggest thing that leads the government to not want to do it, because I imagine they know that they would need to do something like that to directly compete with Bitcoin.
Yeah,
and they don't want to create something where they can't pull the levers. Like,
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
that's against the current ideology of governments.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I would imagine that,
I think crypto might force their hand, right? Like, so I think
Yeah.
I think that's what they're doing. I think it's kind of like it's like an arms race, right? Where a lot of governments around the world are looking over at cryptocurrency and going, "Uh-oh, this is a definite, competitor to our system for sure." And as long as it's small potatoes, which, to be honest, like, even at its current market cap, with like the total crypto market cap is like 2.26 trillion or something. Even there, if you compare that to stocks and bonds are hundreds of trillions combined in market cap.
Mhm.
So right now, I don't think governments are that concerned, because they're going, well, a couple of percent of the economy or whatever is shunting in that direction. But yeah, I think they are starting to wake up and go, maybe we might have to step into this space.
I
right?
can definitely attest to that. I work within the finance field, and like a huge amount of our clients, from high tech companies who have already been on top of it, to pretty low tech companies, are now wanting in on crypto. Like, it's all about crypto now. And so everything, like, my entire company is just flooded with crypto. And, everybody knows about it. Everybody talks about it. Most people don't know their ass from a hole in the ground about it, just like myself until now. But when you got low tech clients who don't really give a damn about, they might have been using paper invoices and stuff like that, talking about crypto. I think it's now hit the stage where it's going to start accelerating pretty quickly. Unless something really shakes up and scares everybody away for a little bit, I think it's just it's going to flood towards that direction without I think any breaks, for at least for a while.
I think the combination of technology that crypto brings together has potential in the modern economy. Like, it has huge potential, from blockchain to the
smart
crypto
contracts.
Smart contracts, a lot of that stuff's over my head in terms of the technicals, but at the same time, I can grasp it enough to realize, oh yeah, there's definitely applications here that smart people will figure out and create value from, right? Like, people are going to create value using these technologies. I think we're still in like the infancy, right? Like, this thing has only been around, really 10 years since Bitcoin. And honestly, like, actually a good chunk of people paying attention for like 3 or 4 years, right? So I think you're going to...
2017 seems to be when it really blew up. That's when the price shot up like crazy. That seems to be that
was the first boom for sure.
Yeah, and that's where all of the videos on YouTube with all these interviews with the the inventors of various coins and whatnot, that's where all of them started cropping up. That's what I noticed. But even just looking at this technology when I was doing research for this podcast, I could see immediately, like, because I didn't really know anything about smart contracts or any of these things. But then once reading about the Ethereum smart contracts, I realized it's just going to absolutely take over. Like, once you figure out how to do what you want to do well with this stuff, companies will run enormous chunks of their systems on this stuff. And you might not have to run it all on like the Bitcoin. Like, a lot of it'll be private. I think a lot of private blockchains will come out and be used. I think it really will have an enormous impact on so many different parts of the economy. Like, I can't predict all of them, but I can already see, just even screwing around, watching a few videos and watching how the guys program this stuff and how they build smart contracts and plug and play. And like, I was just watching some videos of guys like actually doing the coding. It's not that hard. I could learn it, and I'm a moron. Like it's a pretty basic language. What's the language called? I can't remember, but Solidity, I think, is what they use for Ethereum.
Solidity on Ethereum, yeah.
Yeah, and then they just use like a program Mist. They already have it all built out for you, and it's just and some of them, like just sending contracts, like it's like if you're relatively bright, you can figure this shit out in a weekend and start mucking around with it. Like it's eventually people are gonna start doing some wild shit with it, especially with, I think, like smart contracts. You can string them together. Like you can get some insane levels of complexity with them. Like just being able to do all that and pull contracts into other contracts that you can build a huge chain of them. Like that's programming, right? Like it's programming with you write a program for the smart contract, and then you can string a bunch of those smart contracts together to execute like a big piece of code, essentially, like code within code. You're going to be able to do some pretty wild stuff with that. Like it's going to take a while for people to figure out how to do it and iron out all the kinks, but I would say within 5 years things are going to look pretty different.
Again, the places. One thing I do wonder about, I guess, and I'm not knowledgeable, is like I think a lot of that stuff, a lot of those things that people talk about in terms of like smart contracts and all this stuff, that stuff was already happening on the web with, in a centralized fashion with, say Visa and other payment methods and just other companies like doing it in a centralized fashion using centralized technology. And the thing that like cryptocurrency brings to the table is decentralization. And I'm not 100% sure that a lot of the applications that people tout, like, oh, blockchain being so good for, I don't just see like why you need to decentralize them. It's like, even say something like payments, like online payments with like Visa or whatever. It's like, is that really like such a bad system in the current instantiation? Like, is there anyone screaming out there like, oh man, there's no way for me to, practically and conveniently pay for things online? Like,
no,
wait,
I definitely
what?
see
No,
what you mean, but I mean more in terms of like the back end processes when you require high levels of security and like I'd say security and also like transparency within your own company. I think building on top of a blockchain is huge. Now, it's going to be an internal blockchain, but I think that would have, like, just looking at a back end of a company, that would stop a lot of the stupid little problems that crop up in the back end of businesses. Like,
but I guess my question is like, why does it need to be a blockchain that so say you're using it for internal controls in a company, why does it need to be a blockchain rather than just like a specifically like a decentralized blockchain of some sort that isn't available or wasn't available till now, rather than just like a record keeping, say you're tracking inventory. What does a blockchain offer that current inventory tracking systems don't?
It's a lot. I think they're a lot less tamperable, which is the big thing, because a lot of problems occur with just people screwing around with that. I do think that you're absolutely correct. It's not one of those things where you have to rip out all of your systems and then just start throwing in like decentralized just because it's the new hot buzzword. But I do think for quite a few things, that extra layer of security is pretty important for a lot of companies, especially when especially from like an audit perspective or something like that. I think especially if you're a bank or whatnot and you're demanding an audit of a company or a pubco, that could like massively increase your like just the level of trust that's seen by the other companies that are lending you money or equity, like investing or like generating equity interest. Now, that how much is required and how, like, you definitely don't want to be throwing it out on a public blockchain, obviously, but I do think it would help quite a bit with a lot of internal security. I see quite a bit.
Oh
of
yeah,
potential.
I'm not saying there's no application. Obviously, I'm just saying like I do think there are certain applications that people toss around like blockchain for that. You look at the incumbent system and you're like, wait, is this already like, is this going to help in any way? And a lot of the time, it feels like the answer is no, and that the people just found this new like they're what is it? Once you have a hammer, everything looks like a
I was
nail
just gonna
type
say
thing.
exactly. There, I definitely think it's pretty easy to fall prey to that with this. Like one of the things I noted with doing research on smart contracts is exactly that. Like a lot of people are saying, "Oh, well, you can use it for these applications, and it'll be perfect." It's like, well, you already have an application for that. I don't see why you'd need to do anything other than that. Like it doesn't really make a lot of sense that you would have to um, replace your internal mechanism. Like it doesn't make sense. But again, it really, I think it will shake things up massively. Like I do think it will.
I agree. I agree. I'm just. I guess I find myself sometimes pushing back against or kind of thinking critically about some of the proposed stuff. And again, I'm no technical expert, but it does seem like, wait a second, this doesn't seem like this helps in any way or doesn't improve efficiency. Or if it does, there's other costs that are probably not being considered that are going to go up. That end of the day, you're not any better off doing this than just keeping your incumbent system.
The thing that I wonder about, and I wasn't able to find a very concise answer, is whether a centralized rather than decentralized digital currency would benefit from existing blockchain technologies. So, say the US government wanted to create a digital currency that it had control of all the levers on and centralized it. Would they have a reason to make that a blockchain, or would they just run it like a Visa payments?
I think one says I think there are technologies and there are features of say a cryptocurrency like say Bitcoin that the U.S. government that the current Visa system doesn't offer. One being a public transaction record, right? So the entire Bitcoin ledger is available to anyone who wants to look at it. So you can see every single transaction that has ever happened in Bitcoin on the chain. That's a lot of transparency. And maybe, say, for the US government making a coin, right? They might not want to have that amount of transparency, but they could definitely offer a coin that has much more transparency than, say, the current centralized payment system. So like something like transparency is a feature that cryptocurrency issued by the government could have a lot more of than the current system.
The thing I think, either way, however they go about bringing in digital currency, like the existence of Bitcoin and Ethereum is kind of shifting the public perception around what can be used as a store of value and money towards certainly making a digital currency much more plausible. And I imagine the Chinese will be happy to have a blockchain on their digital yuan, so that they can track what all of their people have bought with all their money.
Yeah.
And make it expirable, make their money
Yeah, well,
expire.
that's what I think is the most interesting part, is digital currency as a tool of modern monetary theory, where you can then finally achieve the dream of either negative interest rates or money that expires, such that people are incentivized to spend and they aren't even able to save.
I would say that one good thing about Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies is getting people to talk about and criticize central bank policy, right? Like the just insane money printing that's been going on, and just having people think about that and go, I don't think anyone knows for sure whether the limits of it. Even say modern monetary theory does admit that you can create hyperinflation, because we've seen it, right? Like governments can overprint, and that's why modern monetary theory would say that you have to consider inflation impact as probably one of the key, or if not the key, consideration when you do public spending or deficit spending. But just having people actually, I mean, most people in the cryptocurrency realm don't think about the fundamentals or give a shit at all. They're just,
No.
Pick me my lotto ticket that I can buy a Lambo with. But, there is enough people that are, I think, getting interested in cryptocurrency that probably haven't thought about economic theory before, haven't thought about central banks, haven't thought about any of this stuff, that are getting exposed. And I think that's for the best, right? I think that's for the benefit of everyone, that more people are getting educated about these things, because it honestly is very complicated and confusing, and we need more people thinking about it, because there's a whole bunch of risks in the economic system that come from our choices. And the more people that are aware of the risks and more people thinking about, about them, the more likely we are to be able to bring about solutions and avoid them, right?
Yeah, it certainly seems like we're in very unprecedented economic times, or we're living through Weimar Germany 2.0, depending on who you listen to.
Well, I think that might be an overstatement, but
if only we could get so
there's a lot of people on the alarmist side that see a lot of trends in common with Weimar Germany, but
yeah, most of them have cash for gold promotional coupon things, or some sort of relationship to gold, or other cryptocurrencies,
or glass eye.
Like, it's just the remarkable amount of amount of
who's
people.
The glass eye reference?
Michael Burry.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
Just
Crazy
shilling
bastard.
gold. That
Oh yeah, Michael Burry's definitely not shilling gold, but he's like, you just got to see these comparisons, similarities.
Well, I think there is, there is shades of it for sure. Like the degree to which the money supply is increased is concerning, combined with the productivity losses from the last year. I think there are enough alarm bells and enough red flags that it is concerning, but I think it might be an exaggeration to say that we're going to get, have to pay for things in weight of USD rather than value.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the thing, is that if you go into it, you can find, how would you say it? On the surface level, there's not much in common. You dig deeper. Oh, there's these commonalities. You dig even deeper, and there's less commonalities. Like there's a lot of parallels to be drawn, and then a lot of reasons that they aren't the same.
Yeah, we are in a completely different economic.
But if anyone knew what was going to happen, for sure, they'd be coming away with a lot of money. But nobody knows what's going to happen for sure.
Well, I think that's the same.
Maybe we're just going to get super coronavirus, and then we're all completely dead.
History rhymes, doesn't necessarily repeat.
Yeah.
Which I think you could see that with the US, and we could get. Although people forget that in the 70s there was like 25% yearly inflation, and
the good old days.
I mean, the 70s. I don't think people look back on the 70s as a particularly awesome economic time in the US, but it's not like it was like the end of the world.
Yeah, it wasn't like Weimar Germany where everybody's just worried about.
Well, there's a big difference between inflation and hyperinflation.
That's true.
Hyperinflation ends countries. Inflation is just a little rough.
Yeah, I guess I just don't. I think 25% for me seems like kind of like the higher end of what you'd be looking at in the US these days with what they've done. But I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we get 100%. I don't see it.
Yeah, 25% I would be higher than I would ever expect.
Yeah. So, countries survive that, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's not like the whole thing collapses, and then you have the rise of Nazism.
Well, and the other interesting, I guess, conversation in terms of like cryptocurrency and money printing and huge deficit spending, like modern monetary theory again, MMT, is always Japan, right? Japan printed a shitload of money. They also racked up huge debts and huge deficits. Like their debt by GDP was like 2 point. I haven't actually looked at it for 2020 or 2021, but in the years preceding coronavirus, it was like 2.5x the US. And they didn't have inflation as a problem. They had deflation. So
it's just clown world all the way down.
Oh, well, yeah, I think what the point there is, like, it's complicated, I guess.
Exactly.
It comes back to,
It's if you knew what was going to happen and you're speaking like you're just a jackass, because there are many different factors going in and interacting, and it's just not possible to figure out exactly what's going to occur from this.
Well, I think there are principles and there are things you can reasonably predict without being a jackass. But if you're making like super specific,
exactly, saying this is the way, this is definitely going to happen, like case closed. Bitcoin is going to be the only store of value. Case closed. You're not being careful.
And good on people that do those claims and put their money where their mouth is. Like, I'm no problem with Bitcoin maximalists who think that Bitcoin's the only store of value, or going to be the big store of value going forward, and have their assets in Bitcoin. Like, good on them. Like, that's a bet. It's a risky one, I guess, and that's risk makes the world go round. So good for them for putting their money where their mouth is. But again,
you gotta respect
if you're not willing to blow up your entire portfolio and be penniless, then you might want to not go 100% Bitcoin allocation. You don't need to. I don't think there's any. And again, a lot of even Bitcoin maximalists themselves would say, there's no reason for you as a regular Joe to do what I do and go 100%. You can go 1% or you can go 5%. It just might be worth having some exposure.
I actually think it's one of those things where it's completely reasonable. And one of the things that you posted, Hubbards, was that debate between those two. I guess they were both institutional investors, were they not?
No.
Mike Green isn't he?
Mike Green, is an investor. He runs some sort of.
Pompliano I thought he was an investor as well. I thought that's what he did. But
I don't think he runs. He has a tech background, and I think he was in the military as well. But he's not. I don't think he ever. Maybe he did some investing or worked for some investing firm. I don't know. Possibly.
Yeah, I might just be confused. But one of the things I noted there, like the one guy, Green, was pretty adamant that you shouldn't have any sort of Bitcoin exposure. And I think, he brought up some great criticisms of Bitcoin, and like there's some very serious risks involved with it, not just complete, a serious risk that we can dive into after. But I do think it's one of those things where having a bit of exposure to it, even though there might be some serious risks, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think completely hedging yourself out of such investments is not great. Even if you just have that 1%, you gotta have a little. You gotta take a little risk in life.
I think that does depend on your situation, right? Like if you're, in your 20s or early 30s, and you put a couple percent in cryptocurrency because you want to know, you think it might go to the moon, and you want to have some exposure and you want to take some extra risk. That's probably fair. If you're a retiree and you're, putting even 5 or 10% of your account in cryptocurrency, I mean, unless your account's pretty well padded and you're
not
at
worried
risk
about losing it.
you're okay with losing 5% of your portfolio or whatever, then maybe it's you know it's not your play, right? Like maybe you should you know, stick to your bonds and stocks and live a good life.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. You should actually just go buy a bunch of RTX 390s and set up a mining operation. They're only $4,000 brand new in Canada.
Well, that's for the plebes. So now they have ASIC Ethereum miners, and so what you do is you order one from China, and then China QC test your product for 12 months until they've depleted all value out of it, and then they ship it to you, and there's your $25,000 paperweight.
Sounds reasonable.
Well, that's what they do. So China, for like Bitcoin and Ethereum ASIC miners, which is ASIC is application specific. I can't remember what the rest is, but basically it's an ASIC is something created specifically for one purpose. So like a Bitcoin ASIC just mines Bitcoin. Like all the hardware is built around solving the 256 hash in the most efficient and quickest manner possible. So they're all
about 1,000 times more efficient than just like a standard graphics card. It's like a massive upgrade.
But how much more efficient are they than a standard CPU? Throwback to the old 2012 mining days.
The real question is how much more efficient are they than a Sega 64?
Oh, true. But I think I've seen someone try to mine some sort of altcoin on a Game Boy Advance.
Or how much more efficient are they than hand solving the algorithm?
True. How many slaves would you need to make money hand solving?
Back in my day, I just Bitcoin mined with pen and paper, buddy.
You know, they don't want you to know it, but Boole himself was the first Bitcoin miner.
Classic. Yeah, but China will make these ASIC miners, and then they'll put them in a farm for a long time. And as soon as their profitability is kind of used up, so to speak, then they'll ship them to customers in wherever that ordered them. So I would...
That's expected.
Not usually. It would be weird for a company to sell a money-making machine and send it right to you. Just if you think about the incentives there, maybe think about like, why is this company sending me this basically machine that prints money? It's because they've already used it for its practical purposes of printing money, and it doesn't have much life left.
That's why you buy stocks of large corporations that mine Bitcoin. It's the real power move.
Yeah, you got to go to the OG gambling and just gamble on stocks.
It's like my boys in Quebec are getting in new ASICs, and then they're shipping their old ASICs down to Argentina, where they got to hook up with some wholesale power, and they're going to mine in Argentina as well. It's like, those are some gains right there.
Can't possibly go tits up. I agree. Do you guys have any other specific talking points to yammer on about?
I think we could do a bit on Ethereum, because I think the colloquial understanding, and I think that's not horribly off base, is that Bitcoin's the gold and Ethereum is the silver, in the sense that in people's minds traditionally, when precious metals were used as currency, gold was more of a store of value or used for extreme purchases, and silver was used for your everyday normal purchases.
Yeah, I remember back in the day when the silver fee was you go and buy a cup of coffee, and that's just $13 fucking USD charge.
And there's gas fees on silver.
Jokes aside, yeah, Ethereum. I mean, we already touched on smart contracts, but the big difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum is Ethereum has a complete programming language, Solidity, that allows you to write quite a bit more complicated contracts, or well, like Bitcoin is just money essentially. It's just value transactions, whereas Ethereum you can do fairly complicated smart contracts that have conditions for payout.
And so with the Ethereum, the big problem that has been run into recently is that it's extremely popular, and there are gas fees that are involved in having your contract added to the blockchain, and those gas fees have gotten quite prohibitively expensive for many applications.
Well, and I can explain. This is a little bit of technical stuff to get into, but apparently there was people that made bots that were front running transactions, and so they were basically getting in between buyer and seller to arbitrage the difference. And in order to get first in the block to do that front running, they were paying really high gas fees. So that was one of the reasons that gas fees were getting so crazy expensive, was all these arbitrage bots were bidding up gas like crazy to get to the front of the line. And apparently someone figured out how to, I don't understand it 100% at all, basically, but someone figured out how to order it so that the bots weren't having to bid up the gas and make everything a nightmare. So transaction fees have gone down like, I don't know, 60-80% in the last couple of weeks.
Okay, I hadn't heard that, so that's good news for the usability of Ethereum.
Yeah, because it was like $15, between $6 to $15 a transaction at one point, and now it's down to like a couple dollars a transaction, which, I mean, not ideal, but it's much more stomachable, and it's probably going to get better. I mean, I guess Ethereum's another good place to go with Ethereum is proof of work versus proof of stake.
Oh yeah, that's a good thing to explain, because they're moving towards proof, right?
Yeah, they want to do proof of stake rather than proof of work.
And I guess it circles us back to Bitcoin, but it's probably worth it because that's another huge criticism that cryptocurrency, and especially Bitcoin, get from outside the community or outside of people that use it, is the amount of energy it uses for proof of work. So basically all the ASICs that are doing the mining obviously are powered. And I don't know the exact numbers, but at one point I saw that Bitcoin itself was using like the more power than the entire country of Argentina. And I think the number I saw was 0.35% of the world's power was being used by Bitcoin at one point. Like,
yeah, that sounds like what I've seen as well. Other countries have been brought up, but I don't know the difference between country power usage. It's basically like a country, though.
Yeah, it was ranking in, it was a respectably large country in terms of power use at one point, and probably still now is even worse because it's gone up. The hash rate has gone up, which means the power use has gone up.
And then the biggest problem is that a lot of that power is being used in China, and China generates a lot of their electricity with coal. So it's very dirty power as well. In 2020, China was the only, I guess the term would be developed country, if you can slot China into there. Basically the only large economy that increased their amount of coal being burned to generate electricity.
And so obviously that's a lot of power, and a lot of people would say that's an unnecessary use of power because it's just, fake money on the internet. And why are you spending real power that has environmental costs doing this? It's a waste of money. I think a couple counter arguments that I've seen that are valid is, let's pretend Bitcoin does replace some percentage of the incumbent banking system, it would only be a fair comparison if you looked at, the difference between the two. Say Bitcoin versus Visa or whatever, Bitcoin versus XYZ, or cryptocurrency versus XYZ competitors or things that it replaced. You can't just say, oh, you compare it to zero, because if it is actually serving some sort of function, which theoretically it would be in the financial sector, the financial sector uses power, obviously. So that has to be taken into consideration. The second argument, which I find less convincing, is that it, quote unquote, puts a bounty on power use. So like Bitcoin maximalists will say, well, it incentivizes people finding the best methods for generating power. I can't think of a
There's
single...
no incentive to find that before Bitcoin. Gosh darn it.
Well, that was what I was thinking, is like, there was lots of incentive to find better ways of generating power before Bitcoin. Yeah, maybe Bitcoin has helped put more incentive. And number two, there's nothing in Bitcoin inherently that says the power has to come from a environmentally friendly source or an environmentally sustainable source. Like,
Just
Bitcoin doesn't
fire up the coal plants.
Yeah, Bitcoin doesn't give a shit if you're you're just burning fucking straight force down. It doesn't give a shit how dirty or clean the power is. That there's no reason that it has to use clean power. Therefore, there's no reason that it's increasing the adoption of clean energy. I could see the argument that's saying, like, it I don't know, like, maybe there's some logic where you could say that it does put financial incentive to find better technology, and that a lot of that money's already going towards renewables, so it might accelerate renewables. I don't know.
The only thing I can see in that vein that makes sense is in a country like China. I'm not sure how frequent this happens in smaller countries. What they already have is Bitcoin miners that move their operations between provinces based on the season. So in the wet season, they go to the provinces that have cheap hydropower, which then drives up the price of hydropower in that area because they're buying it. And theoretically, they could do the same thing with renewables anywhere. If there's a season where the renewables produce more electricity than is necessary or than is ideal, and would otherwise be driving down their own cost of electricity because of oversupply, Bitcoin can eat up that supply, Bitcoin mining. But in practice, that's definitely not how it works. That's kind of like a idealized pipe dream of the future where you have different renewable energies producing different amounts, and a way to move your Bitcoin miners between the regions that are overproducing at any given time.
Yeah, it seems like it's not. The relocation is also not just like super easy. I don't know how difficult it is, but it does require some level of.
In China, it's basically twice a year. Like they'll move from Sichuan to Inner Mongolia, and then from Inner Mongolia to Sichuan.
So, yeah, but I guess like the move even twice a year, right? You got to rip up all your production, reinstall it. I mean, it's not huge if it's only twice a year, but it's not nothing, right? Like.
Yeah.
A bit of a game.
No, it's unrealistic to think that will become a normal thing. Like if Inner Mongolia somehow came up with a way to run all on renewables instead of all on coal, and then it would be a great system, but it's probably not going to happen, at least not in the next decade.
Yeah, so I do think the environmental impact I think that is a legitimate criticism of proof of work. And to me, it just doesn't seem like the counter arguments hold much water. Like it just does seem like a pretty significant use of power that it doesn't provide much additional incentive to find better power. It doesn't necessarily have to use clean power. So that brings us to proof of stake, which I'm not 100% sure, honestly, how it works exactly, but basically the way that they validate the blockchain is you stake your existing currency in that. So say it's Ethereum, you would stake, I think the proposed amount for Ethereum is 32 Ethereum. So you'd stake to make basically a verifying node, you'd stake 32 Ethereum into that node, and you'd use that as the primary way that you verify, and you'd get basically rewarded in proportion to the amount of currency you stake. And
I also just see that becoming a problem, though. Like if somebody can hoard a bunch of it, but I don't know how distributed the stake is like so far.
well, you can. The other thing is you can stake it. There will be staking pools that combine people's coins into pools to stake. So even if you have a tiny bit of Ethereum, you can still stake.
Oh, and yeah, that makes sense. Like
You just have to join a staking pool. So you might have to eat a bit of a fee for the pool, like the pool fee, because obviously there's going to be admin costs and stuff associated. But there's lots of proposed and I think operating actually staking pools where you can throw your Ethereum in to the pool and then they'll stake it on verifying nodes for you. So it's not like you're locked out unless you have 100 grand to buy 32 Ethereum. But nobody knows if staking is going to be a long-term. I think the big concern people have is that staking will not be as secure as proof of work. So Ethereum is going to be the test. Not as secure as proof of work.
Yeah, I do think that that's true. It keeps the energy costs like completely down, but it does seem like to me, I don't understand it well enough to really know what's going on there, but it just, to me, it didn't seem as robust, at least. Like, I do think that the proof of work has problems, especially with like China eating up 60+% of the computing power, which then it pretty much allows them, if they can tell everybody what to do, which the Chinese government definitely could, they could harness all of that and completely upend everything. But it seems like proof of stake is even more open to that exploit.
Well, more or less, because you have to have the coins staked. So you couldn't have, well, I mean, you could have 60% of the coins owned in China and staked in China, but that seems less likely than having 60% of the mining power in China.
Yeah, because that 60% is already there, so it's 100% likely.
Yeah, but I mean, because China produces the ASICs, that just means that they have a large leg up on the rest of the world in developing mining power.
Yeah, I don't really totally understand the technicals at all of the staking, but the concern that I've heard from people more knowledgeable is that it has potential to be a lot less secure than the proof of work. But if they can implement it in Ethereum and get it working and have it, avoid any issue, it would be a huge, like, proof of concept for proof of stake. And, theoretically, a lot of coins from that point would move over to proof of stake if Ethereum can do it. So I think that would be a pretty big step forward for cryptocurrency if they could do that, because it obviously lowers the cost to run the systems, and it also nullifies a lot of the criticism, especially the bad PR, which I think for something like cryptocurrency, a lot of it is like getting adoption and getting people to buy in is a big PR battle a lot of the time.
Yeah, I actually do think that whole energy, the power consumption thing will turn out to be a pretty big deal, because especially the new generation of young people are far more concerned about sustainability than the older generation, and that they're going to be the ones adopting it a lot too. They will look at that, and that will come into that will impact their decisions on which coin to go for if they're going to do that. I just think that it's.
Well, I think there's definitely going to be a move towards advertising clean bitcoins, like bitcoins generated with clean electricity. It's just, from what I've seen, it seems like that's in its infancy, but it's possible, and that'll be an interesting development.
Yeah, I absolutely think it's going to become a part of it, because I think people, they're going to look at it. It's like, well, we want to, it's digital. Why are you using all this power when it's just a digital thing? Just figure out a way, and then I'm going to invest in it, or I'll buy into this one. Like, I do think that's going to be something to look for.
As long as you do have proof of work, though, I think the criticism will be leveled at like, even if you do have quote unquote clean Bitcoins, like a percentage that are generated by clean or whatever, I think until like the whole thing is somehow certified clean, it's going to be a hard criticism to get around and deflect for the coin. Like Ethereum proof of stake, it's just like a huge win in comparison to Bitcoin.
The big thing I think with like advertising clean Bitcoin is it would also be a PR move, because the fundamental problem is that you're using electricity, clean or not, and therefore that electricity could be better directed. But most people focus on the direct emissions of the electricity used to generate it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think either way there will be a push for.
But like proof of stake.
Yeah, I think the proof of stake is.
Proof of stake is a big advantage there.
Yeah, and I actually do think that that will make a big difference. Like, just all the people I know who are looking, obviously this is purely anecdotal, but tons of the people I know that are into this stuff, not from a really hardcore technical perspective, but they're also very concerned about, sustainability as well. Like, once they figure out that, because a lot of them are not really looking too deep into it, but I think eventually that will filter out into the public consciousness that you require a ton of energy. Like that, I think that will eventually, people will sort out that's going on. I don't think that's penetrated the general public's knowledge too deeply yet, but it will, and then that'll.
It's definitely penetrated like the tech realm, though.
Oh yeah, but I think like when as this gets more and more adopted by the general layperson, that's a little bit more.
Anyone like moderately educated about or moderately informed on, say, cryptocurrency knows of the environmental costs. Like, you don't have to be very deep into the game for that. Yeah, but
I think a big chunk of the investor group will be just people who are completely less.
Well, I don't think like the benchmark of adoption, or like the benchmark of, or the type of person you have to convince is your average Joe Blow on the street. Like that person,
or just like that person, on Wealthsimple.
Not even that. It's just like, yeah, like they don't give a shit about the environment either. Like, not nearly as much. Like your average Joe is not that concerned. It's going to be your more like people involved in finance and corporate governance and all that stuff that are going to be able to make big purchases into cryptocurrency or greenlight it, that are also going to be much more aware of these things. And I think most of those people in those positions are already aware of the environmental impact, right? Like they're not dumb, they're educated, they read, they know stuff. Like that level of person is not going to escape the clear implication for the environment of, say, Bitcoin. And I think the other like less talked about thing, but I guess it depends where you go, but just the equipment utilization, right? Like it's a tremendous amount of technology that leads to both e-waste and just, a lot of people argue could be better used. And I've seen this actually argument used a lot, is like there's so much hash rate being used by Bitcoin that could be put into other distributed programs for that need a lot of brute force tech power. Like there was, I think, a genome decoding one.
Yeah, exactly.
Protein folding project. Like a lot of different projects that require brute force computing that people would say have much more worthy causes than Bitcoin, right? And that's another PR thing that I think will, and I mean, you can even see it with like gamers, quote unquote gamers, hate cryptocurrency because crypto miners buy up all their gear, right? And So that's a
I'm
PR.
sure they also screw over other industries with that too, right? Like all the miners are buying all that stuff, and like it incentivizes the board makers to make a bunch of those just to offload them to the miners, but they could be producing some of those boards for different or using their production capacity for boards for other things like vehicles and whatnot, right? Like it has a knock-on effect throughout the general weight.
Yeah, but what would you rather have? More hash rate or vehicle factories producing vehicles? Because it's way better to have vehicle factories shut down.
To be fair, I think a lot of the vehicle factories probably use tech that is on older nodes that wouldn't be really affected, but still, yeah, I get your point. Like there definitely is a knock-on effect where there is, different industries that are disrupted by the dearth of supply. Or is that the right word? Or is that the opposite?
I think that's the correct word.
Dearth. Yeah, dearth is correct.
Therefore, yeah, obviously it's gonna create higher costs, shortages, etc., and that is a pain in the ass for a lot of people in different industries. So and again, proof of stake, I think by and large solves that. So another, point of that where it's just seems hard for Bitcoin to get around those two criticisms being thrown at it constantly. And I don't think Bitcoin can move to proof of stake. I don't think it's possible.
I'm not too sure.
Yeah, I doubt it would be possible, but I also have not looked into that specifically.
Yeah, that's something I'm not too. I can't comment.
That's another difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum is that Ethereum has a development team, does it not?
Yeah,
exactly. And they're
led by a Canadian, actually.
A lot of that's I guess a strength and a weakness. So they are, the joke around the cryptocurrency community is like, some creative, interesting coin will come out and, that's going to be an Ethereum feature in, 18 months or whatever, right? Because Ethereum kind of picks and chooses interesting features from other projects and puts them into Ethereum as they see fit. So it's much more adaptable than, say, Bitcoin, which is not adaptable at all, not changeable at all. I think, that's not fair. It is changeable, but you have to get a consensus of the whole network, which is actually distributed and decentralized. So it was basically a civil war to when they were talking about deciding block size, and it actually did cause a hard fork, and Bitcoin went with the smaller block sizes and Bitcoin Cash went with the bigger. But that was like a huge multi-month essential civil war. Whereas Ethereum has a much easier time.
I'm shocked that they could even get like any sort of like mustering that many people to make that decision. I would have guessed that a lot of them wouldn't have given a damn. But
well, I don't know exactly how they push out the decision, but fork. They got it done. But yeah, it was a nightmare. So it's extremely difficult to get Bitcoin to actually make changes and adaptations or updates. Ethereum's much better because you do have a central developer team that will come out with a change. They still do have to get buy-in to a certain extent, but usually so for the last few years it's been pretty smooth doing that. But again, people make the criticism like, oh, well, now you've moved back to centralization. You have this developer team with financial incentives that can change things, and therefore it's not truly decentralized, and it's not truly a tamper-proof blockchain, I guess.
But that's one of the interesting things when you go further into the crypto markets and you get into the altcoins, as they're collectively called. They aren't Bitcoin or Ethereum, in that the biggest hype around any altcoin would be that it's an Ethereum killer. And in almost all cases, if it should kill Ethereum, Ethereum instead just adopts that, and the altcoin does not kill Ethereum.
And then it just turns into a shell coin.
Run on Ethereum as well. Like they're integrated into the Ethereum ecosystem, where they're essentially they add some sort of feature, or they propose to add some sort of functionality or feature to the Ethereum ecosystem, so they're a complement to it, right? Rather than it's a lot of the more sizable altcoins fall into that category.
So their goal from the beginning is never to kill Ethereum, but instead to build upon the ecosystem.
Yeah, I think maybe I'm wrong. I think that's basically Chainlink feeds information into the Ethereum. The Chainlink's purpose is to take outside information, like real world information, get consensus on that information to come to a definite kind of I guess truth about it. So, did it rain in X area? And then they'll take information from, say, weather sensors, come to a consensus between those, sensors, sources of data, to determine whether or not it did rain. And then that'll feed into the system. So now you have a piece of real world data that can be utilized in the cryptocurrency ecosystem to, say, utilized for smart contracts to, I guess for like the weather, that can be used for a crop insurance smart contract. So if it rains enough for farmers to grow their food, the insurance doesn't pay out. If it doesn't rain enough, then the insurance does pay out. So that's a real, it relies on real world data, and Chainlink converts that into something usable for the crypto ecosystem to pay out.
It's a pretty, like that, I think application is pretty awesome, to be quite honest. I think that is, I mentioned this before, but I really do think that there's some huge benefits to all of that, and I'm really excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, but have you heard about this meme coin that has no upper limit on how many can be printed, and it's going to the moon? Because Dogecoin is the king of the alts.
Well, it kind of is. I'm pretty sure that coin is going to die. Musk is going to keep pumping it, and then eventually people will forget about it.
No, because Musk is going to keep buying it to inflate and keep the price up. He's the biggest holder. You just know it.
If you want to go and wonder about whether Dogecoin is probably going to implode at some point, you can go and look at the distribution of Doge, and you'll realize that about 80 to 90% of Doge is held by like 10K wallets, and like 50% of Doge is held by like under 100 wallets. And so basically all the price action is plebes
commanded by those wallets.
Well, but all the price action is just plebes trading a few $1,000s worth of Doge around between each other. And there's whales lurking that have hundreds of millions of Doge in their wallets. Yeah. And they will, or some of them billions, I think, of Doge in their wallet. And it already happened the last kind of fall in Doge price was one whale basically dumping a few $1 million worth of Doge to get his nut, and it collapsed Doge like 50%. One whale. I don't even think he exited even close to his full position. He just dumped.
And just got a bunch of just made a bunch of money on retards, and now he's harvesting it.
Rug pulled some scrubs, and
I love watching people get rug pulled. It's so glorious.
When it came out, was like the glory days of altcoins. And so this is ongoing, and it crops up. It increases every time the crypto market goes up. But people make coins that offer no real purpose, but they exist solely to be bought and then sold in what is commonly known as the rug pull maneuver. And people love this because it's basically like a slot machine. You buy in and you try to sell before it starts to tank.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things where it actually is just literally gambling. Everybody knows it's gambling, and they they're doing it because they just want to get in on that action before it all implodes, and it's really fun, right? It's like, okay, is it gonna crater as I click the button and I get fucked, or do I make a bunch of money on this? Like, I literally think it is just a slot machine that they all
And the guys
are aware of.
The guys who made Doge saw this and they're like, let's make a meme coin that's in the same principle as this, but like we have no intention to rug pull it. It's just going to print infinite amounts of coins, so the valuation can't be skyrocketed by one whale buying a bunch and then rug pulling people, and so it won't ever have much value. And then people accumulated millions and millions of Doge because it was a funny meme, and then it's now a fairly expensive coin for the fact that it has no intrinsic value for any meaning, or for anything meaningful.
I actually do think there's a chunk of people who think it's the future. I think there is a pretty diehard group that because I see them on Reddit, and they're pretty, at least a segment of that group they seem to be pretty serious about it. They might just be extremely sarcastic, and I can't tell.
Well, I think a lot of that is mania, right? Where it's people, and a lot of it is also shills, because the internet is full of bots and shills.
Full shills.
But that's what happens in mania, is like people throw logic out the door, and it's like a game of chicken, right? Like everyone in that, say there's a Dogecoin subreddit.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone in there is constantly, trying to hype each other up with memes and ridiculous
posting
proclamations that
Elon said.
Doge is going to 10 and is going to $10 or $20 or $100 a coin, and is going to replace the entire economy. Going to be Doge denominated economy, blah blah blah. But all that is just like people trying to hype each other up to stay in the coin, because that's how like a goddamn
I didn't realize this, but it's literally
Ponzi scheme works.
One of it's a huge subreddit. It's a 1.6 million subreddit. That's massive. Like, it's actually a massive subreddit. Oh,
and then you have your boy Mark Cuban hooking people up with I think it was whatever sports team he owns, whatever sports ball team that is, to get the tickets for it with Dogecoin.
The Mavericks, Dallas Mavericks.
Okay.
That sounds right. Yeah.
It's just fucking Elon pumping it.
Well, Elon and Mark Cuban, Mark Cuban, I feel like it's just full on a PR move. Like, he wants to be hip down with the kids.
I think he does.
He also has Dogecoin, I'm pretty sure, and he also just wants to rug pull some retards. But But I read a thing, and I think it was accurate, that Mark Cuban, since his last big sale, has actually lost net worth. Like, he's managed to erode his wealth.
Well, he's just got to suck China's dick a little bit harder, and he'll be back to where he was at before.
True.
Go grovel in front of Winnie the Pooh for a bit, and he'll be given a couple extra bill, and then he'll get to go up the Forbes list a bit.
Yeah, I think it's pretty reckless, I guess, for celebrities to promote coins,
especially ones like billionaire style guys too, right? Where if it's Paris Hilton promoting it and you listen to her, kill yourself. That's all I suggest for you. But
I think it would be. I think that's the wrong take though, because it's like
it's obviously sarcastic, but
no, but I think Paris Hilton pumping a.
That's true. If she's pumping it,
so boomer right now that you even mentioned Paris Hilton, but
no, because she was doing this.
But Paris Hilton pumping a coin.
Yeah, but she's not even a celebrity anymore. I haven't heard.
If she was pumping a penny stock, people would be like, "This is fucking deplorable, fucking Ponzi scheme shit that she should go to jail for." And the SEC would be
she's got her own NFT, for Christ's sake. Yeah, she's been pumping this shit.
So that's what I mean. Is like, you shouldn't let idiots with influence peddle bullshit, even if it's bullshit, and even if they're even if they're not financial experts, because it's just a great way to have constant fucking pump and dump schemes going on, Ponzi schemes, legal. Like, if you let it go. It's basically legal Ponzi schemes, and every fucking moron with a Twitter following is going to do it, and then you're going to have, a nightmare on your hands.
It's true.
Where what's his name? That one guy who's popular with all the kids on YouTube.
Mr. Beast?
No, maybe Jake Paul or something.
Oh, one of
those guys. Yeah. He bought Bitcoin when he was like in 2013. He bought Bitcoin, and based on that, he was telling people they should buy Doge. And it's like, you're a terrible person. Like, your audience is probably a bunch of like 18 and 19-year-olds.
It's mostly
have
like
no financial knowledge, but they're starting to get money. Well, see, I think isn't he like the older one that's been around for a while? I think his audience is at the age where they could actually invest, and that's the biggest problem.
Yeah, he's been around enough.
And they're going to think that it's actually something like Bitcoin, and they're not going to do any further research.
But wouldn't it be weird if like YouTube celebrities were like, pumping Bayhorse silver? Like,
yeah, exactly.
It would just be degenerate. It would be like, no one would accept that. People would be like, this is fucked. Like, you can't just come onto your Twitter platform for, 50 million people or whatever, and a ton of kids, and tell them to go buy fucking some garbage penny stock and that you own 1 million shares of. And it's the same shit with like shit coins. And even more reputable coins. You shouldn't have, celebrities coming on their soapbox and saying, go buy Bitcoin. I own 100 of them. Like, go fuck yourself. Like, you don't.
Well,
like, we don't let.
You don't. There's
financial
rules
advice
against
come
that in Canada, isn't there? And in the States, like, I figured
there is, and that's why you don't have people pump and dumping penny stocks in as celebrities, but people are getting away with it with crypto.
Canada's hammered the regulations of cryptos a lot harder than the States. I actually think they're starting to put that stuff in.
But like the thing is, it's worse than a penny stock, because a penny stock could blow up and it could not be a pump and dump, but something like Doge was designed to not be able to blow up. It's like, as most fundamental level, there's no value.
Yeah, it's like someone saying go buy Venezuelan fucking money or whatever. Like, go trade your USD for Venezuela dollars or whatever the hell I don't know.
Yeah, eventually it's going to be worth nothing. Like, it's not going to.
Well, they're printing hundreds of trillions of them. The other problem I see with people encouraging, celebrities encouraging their fans to go and buy shit coins, is that like the crypto market is just so full of like absolute fraud. Even if you tell them to go buy Dogecoin, they might go and try to buy something and get scammed.
Dogecoin.
Completely.
They don't know.
They don't even buy Dogecoin.
Or someone know how many dog coins there are.
Yeah, I don't even want to know.
Or they just go on some sketchy exchange or some weird, they search Dogecoin app in the app store and they get some literal fucking spyware that steals their entire credit, their entire bank account, wipes them clean. Like that market is so full of scams outside
some
of
guys.
Scam
yeah, they
coins.
connect their actual bank account and credit card information to it and then just get completely wiped out.
Some guy in Ontario lost like $200,000 because he went into Bitcoin through like what he thought was a real brokerage, and he started making a bunch of money on paper, and so he threw in more money, and he threw in something like $200,000, I think, and then he tried to get it out, and he started getting like these weird replies about how they were sending a courier to him with cash and that they got intercepted, but they'll be there, and just super like English second language sounding replies about how the money was on its way to him and they were definitely on the up and up and don't worry about it.
It's coming in rubles.
And he's definitely never getting his money but he was led along by this until he tried to withdraw for the first time.
Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about. It's like some person goes to buy Doge, and Doge itself is a bad enough investment, but fake Doge is an even worse investment.
Yeah.
So like it's, I mean, I guess penny stocks and stuff can also have their markets that are sketchy, but like, yeah, crypto's the worst. Like it's
greenfield
just,
mining,
it's like,
all disaster.
the thing is, like, just don't buy anything over the counter, and like you've eliminated 90% of the terrifying sketchiness and actual scams for
True.
penny stocks. Like, I can't buy things over the counter with my broker. And I'm like, thank God. Like, I just automatically, I'm not allowed to be an idiot.
Because you would be. Is that what you're
Well,
saying?
that is like the argument, and that's like why people were. I mean, this goes back to the Robinhood stuff with GME. Our financial system does need some guardrail. Like, well, I mean, people argue about this. Some people say the financial system should be totally deregulated and should allow retail investors to do whatever they want with their money. You know, whether that be buy fucking scam coins on scam apps, or be buying over the counter penny stocks for or YOLOing their entire life savings into GME. And there is a counter argument that says no, retail investors are lemmings, and they need some guardrails so they can't do the
They will
stupidest
just
of the
lemming
stupid.
right off the cliff.
Like let them invest in in whatever listed company. And again, that's why you have to take a risk survey at least in Canada. I don't know how applicable to the US this is, but in Canada, like if you open a brokerage account to trade stocks, you have to take a risk assessment quiz or whatever, and based on the quiz results, you have certain options open to you or restricted. So if you answer all the questions as a conservative investor, they're not going to let you buy options, for example. They will not let you buy derivatives because those are high risk, and they don't want you to get liquidated on a derivative trade and lose a shitload of money and then get all pissed at the broker. So there's a lot of liability issues there, and like the crypto market just has none of that. Like you can go and buy whatever the fuck shitcoin you want on exchange. There's no risk management. It's all just a complete fucking casino. And I think that's another criticism that a lot of people will level at Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, is saying like the government is eventually going to step in here to regulate shit, because say Doge implodes tomorrow, all the retards that got burned are going to demand it. They're going to demand government regulation because they're mad.
Well, they're going to demand it, but the government's also going to realize like they just had a whole bunch of their citizens lose all of their money. Now they're saddled with taking care of these people, right? Because
man, Biden's going to get a lot of letters asking for a refund on the Dogecoin.
And Biden's going to be like, yeah, that sounds reasonable. Government has Dogecoin, right? Like, that's us, right? That was the federal government. I instituted that, right?
Yeah, I don't think Biden will know what Dogecoin is, if I'm to be honest.
Actually, people will be asking Musk for a refund.
Yeah.
And then Musk will troll them on Twitter, and I'll be okay with it.
Yeah.
It'll be funny.
It's the way of the world.
Yeah, I just don't personally see it ending on, like, we regulate all the other
yeah, if you're regulating penny stocks, you definitely need to be regulating this. It's just so much more abusable and so much more volatile that it's pretty clear that if you don't have some sort of regulation, you're going to have a lot of people who just keep like wiping themselves out. And you can't have that as a society.
Yeah, and you have to protect people from themselves to a certain extent, and
yeah,
I think you might see similar things
extent.
to. Yeah, well, you might see something similar to like how they regulate stocks right now, where like if you want to buy whatever you want from a broker, you just have to answer a fucking 10-question quiz in the obvious way that puts you in the high risk portfolio. It's not hard to lie, or not hard to maneuver your answers in a way that you get the high risk allocation allowed. So it's not like it's a huge barrier for people, but it's something, right? Like and I think that's what you'll see is like you do want something there, because I guess the government essentially wants some sort of like plausible deniability, or some sort of like cover your ass thing, where they're like, yeah, there's regulations in place, you have to answer a questionnaire, and you answered that you love risk and you love taking it in the ass, so sorry, like you said it yourself. You're okay with this level of volatility. And there's
You
not
answered
really
that you're only on here because casinos are closed.
you answered you're only on here because you can't take enough risk in the casino. There's no way to 100x
There's no
leverage.
margin in the casino.
You can't 25x leverage on house money and fucking have a 50K debt at the end of the day.
Man,
Sad
that's
life.
the way to run a casino. Like, why haven't people introduced leverage into casinos yet?
Exactly. So I do think that's coming down the pipe, and that's gonna. I think that'll put a damper on the worst of the shitcoin.
Yeah. I don't know how
mania.
many there are, but there has to be like 1,000 of them or something now.
No, there's way more than that. There was I think from like 2017, there was something like 1,600 coin offerings in the 2017
Alt season.
all season, and this it's got to be closing
Full run, I
on
guess.
several multiples of that for this era of. So there's like thousands and thousands of shit coins. Some people will just take. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that I think looking historically, like the thing that makes sense as a comparison point is the .com bubble, for the way that anything that gets made that's a crypto is just getting money thrown at it.
Well, there's a story of someone made I think they called it communist token in this cryptocurrency subreddit, and within a few hours it got bid up into the hundreds of thousands of dollars of market cap, and it was a nothing coin. And the theory behind that is that there's bots. There's a bunch of bots that monitor any coin offerings and put in a certain amount of money in the hopes that it'll moon. So there's bots that are preset to fund all these shit coins off the ground as like I'm sure it's algorithmic in order to get the attention. If the coin gets the attention of the retail investor public and they YOLO into it, then the coins can make a hefty profit, right? Or the bots, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's so long as you can like cash out before it drops, which eventually I'm sure your algorithm has the right.
Well, the algorithm's going to be better at it than people 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, so there's some sort of popping going to happen. Whether I'm not sure if it's just going to be shit coins that get obliterated, or if you're going to get more, if it's going to trickle through to the more serious coins. But something's got to give. I don't think you can have thousands and thousands of coins with billion-dollar market caps that literally do nothing.
I was just looking at the actual amount of money lost during the collapse of the .com bubble, and it bottomed out was $5 trillion under its peak. So we've got a ways to go till we hit a...
Yeah, you put the inflation on that, that's like 10 trillion in today's money.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got a ways to go till we reach like true .com levels, but like the principles definitely seem to be similar.
Yeah, so I'm just looking it up. Coin market cap has 5. Is this the last page? No. Does it keep going? They have 4,924 coins listed, and that's definitely not every coin out there. Just the ones that are tracked by coin market cap. So yeah, it's thousands and thousands of coins that are, and yeah, 4,990 of them are going to implode.
At least.
Yeah. So, you guys got any other specific points?
Nope. I think that actually was a pretty good good run of it. I think the only thing that we could have gone into is Satoshi Nakamoto, but we're getting pretty long in the tooth here.
Well, I'll solve it. It's me.
What's that?
True.
It's me. That's me.
I've known it for a long time. I just didn't want to be the first one to say it.
Yeah, I'm coming.
Well, see that theory about the inventor actually being some alt-right fanatic and coming out and wrecking Bitcoin is true. There you go.
Yeah, I use retard like at least 3 times in this podcast.
Exactly. You are clearly
Bitcoin's tanked.
You are clearly Hitler.
Bitcoin is tanked. Oh man.
I love how
Unlucky.
they actually price that in, where they say like
risk analysts,
yeah,
will
might
take
show
into
up
consideration
yeah,
that
it's so good.
Satoshi's some slur wielding degenerate. Too many gamer
One could only
words.
hope.
Exactly. Oh,
Oh.
man. Well, that's it for me. Anything else, you guys?
That was good ending.
Alrighty. Peace.
Peace.